Welcome to NightSide with Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealey. I'm your co-host, Dr. Gilligan, Superintendent of the North Andover Public Schools, and I'm here today high atop NAPS Studios on Main Street with Deputy Superintendent Dr. Mealey and a very special guest. On this podcast, we delve into the world of education, leadership, and inspiring stories that shape our schools and community. Today, we are privileged to have a very special guest, Dr. Patrick Tutwiler, the Secretary of Education for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He's an educational advocate for excellence and access and equity for all students here in the Commonwealth. He has served as an educational leader in a variety of roles. And welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
Good
Glad
to have you here.
Yeah.
And, I don't have your resume in front of me, but I know that you've been an assistant principal at Westford. I know you were principal at Brighton High School, principal at Wayland, deputy superintendent of the Lynn Public Schools, superintendent of the Lynn Public Schools, played basketball at Holy Cross, has a PhD from Boston College, and lives right next door in Andover. So we're thrilled to have him.
Well, you got the resume down right there.
That's it?
That's it.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right.
So welcome. We're really thrilled to have you here.
My pleasure.
And let's dive right in. And Dr. Mealey, you want to take the first question?
I do. Again, welcome. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
When my kids were growing up, they would often ask me, Dad, what is it you actually do? I would try to explain it to them, and when they were asked by their friends, they would just say, I'm not sure. I asked for a lot of people, what does the Secretary of Education do? And in addition, is there anything that you have found that you do that surprised you coming into the job?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you asking. Part of this role involves delivering remarks formally and informally in many different sectors, right? Early ed and care with teachers in front of the college community, and I will often ask, raise your hand if you know what the Secretary of Education does, and no one's hand goes up. Actually, sometimes if my teammates from the Executive Office of Education are there, they'll raise their hands and say, hey, we know, but that's cheating. So this position came to be in 2008 under Deval Patrick. It is, I like to describe it as being the glue between the different sectors of education. I lead the Executive Office of Education, which is kind of like the umbrella department for early education and care, your infants and toddlers, K-12 education, DESE, with which I'm sure you're familiar, and also the Department of Higher Education. And so from birth through college, my job is to help shape an agenda, policy development, resource allocation to ensure that there's a smooth and accessible experience for all students from the day they're born until they graduate from college. What does that look like day to day? A lot of it involves listening, understanding the pain points, but also the bright spots. A lot of reading and research to sort of look at what the path forward for education in Massachusetts should look like, and then sitting at the policy table and sort of being a voice at that table to make sure that the policies match the governor's wishes as it relates to education, and ensuring that the dollars are supporting that effort as well. I sit on a number of boards, as I was explaining to, can I call you Gilly?
You can call me Gilly, that's
okay,
fine.
Okay, all right, we go way back. The Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Board of Early Education and Care, and the Board of Higher Education, as well as a voting member as part of this role. That's as succinct an answer I can offer to that, but I hope that helps.
It does, yeah. Thank you.
That sounds like a lot of board meetings. And we have school committee twice a month. I thought that was a lot. But
Yeah.
Pat, tell us about your journey. What
Yeah.
made you want to become an educator, an educational leader, and who helped you become who you are today?
Yeah. I'll give you the short version of that. I was raised in a single-parent household by an educator. As a matter of fact, my mother retired after almost 50 years in the profession 3 years ago. And, of course, that had a lot of influence on my decision to become an educator. At first, it was the reason why I didn't want to become an educator, sort of looking at some of the things that she experienced as an educator, and then some of the things that I experienced as a student. I sort of thought that's not the path for me. I went to college. I was a history major. When I graduated, no interest in becoming an educator until I stumbled upon a book that sort of flipped my perspective on what's important. And that book is called Ghetto Schooling. It's by a researcher out of Rutgers, whose name is Gene Anion. This was 25 years ago. But that book detailed the experience for elementary students in Newark, New Jersey, most of whom look like me. I saw a lot of parallels in their experience and things that I experienced as a student, and I really saw that book as a call to action. I decided that I wanted to be part of the solution, that I wanted to be part of the effort to make sure that every student has an affirming, supportive education experience that allows them to maximize their potential. Started off as a teacher. I have the utmost respect for that profession. I believe that's where the magic happens, but there are a lot of things that were happening outside of the classroom that were impacting my experience as a teacher, and so I wanted a seat at the leadership table, and therein began my leadership journey, which you named it earlier, assistant principal, principal, and then on to superintendent.
Yeah, in a few different districts that were probably a little bit different from each other.
Different. Yeah. Time in Westford. I actually started in Boston, then went to Westford, to Wayland, and back to Boston, to Lynn. And some of that was circumstantial, and some of that was by design. I'm proud of that experience because it really did provide me a very broad perspective of the different experiences that students in the Commonwealth have, and I bring that perspective to bear on decision making in my role now.
You know, I was talking to Pat a little bit before we came in, Dr. Mealey, and I forgot that he grew up in Minnesota, in St. Paul, and I had lived in St. Paul for 3 years, and I've never heard him say, "You betcha." So I wouldn't have guessed you were, he doesn't have that accent like I have, but he certainly doesn't have the typical Minnesota dialect going today.
No, I don't. But I just want to be clear, I only lived there for 2 years, so I didn't have enough time for it to sink in.
There you go.
Yeah.
It is always fun to find those things you have in common. You mentioned starting in Boston.
Yep.
I started in Boston in life, and as a student, I attended the oldest public elementary school in North America, the Mather. The Mather.
Yep. I know it. Sure.
And I was there for the first couple of years of busing, so
had
quite the experience.
Okay. Sure.
Yep. And
Absolutely.
the other thing we have in common is all three of us are history majors.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yep.
History teacher.
Let's go. I love
Yeah.
it.
So with that in mind, besides being a history major, what characteristics do you believe make an effective teacher and administrator?
Yeah, I mean, here's what I would say about that, and I'm sure there are many, many perspectives. I believe that, in my experience, the most effective teachers and leaders that I've had the pleasure of meeting or working with are really grounded in a set of core values. They are really clear on who they are, what they believe, and what the mission is. And they lean into it in ways that are visible, right? You see those beliefs on display every day in their work with students, every day in a leader's work with teachers or with the community. And so for me, I'd say that must-have characteristic is a really solid set of core values, a really strong set of beliefs, and chief among which is the belief that all students are capable of performing at a really high level. And when they have that belief, man, it just shows, and it's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice segue into the next question. So, this almost my 30th year in this business, and across all 3 decades in education, and here in Massachusetts even, the achievement gap remains a concern, particularly among traditionally marginalized students. So what strategies do you see that are being implemented across the Commonwealth that might be able to close this gap?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts on that. First, I would say, I'd spent time in Boston, I spent time in Lynn, and I spent time in Wayland also, really dedicated to that very challenge, to solving that challenge. And the big takeaway for me is if you want to solve that challenge, first you have to tend to students' hierarchy of need, meaning when students have their cognitive resources consumed with where their next meal is coming from, or where they're going to lay their head at night, or some, a mental health challenge, whether it's anxiety or depression or hopelessness. If you're not tending to those things first, I don't care how good the lesson is, I don't care how evidence-based your curriculum is, it's only going to go so far. You need to address those needs with that student in partnership with their family or caregivers first, before we can even have the conversation about what's the best way to elevate that student academically. And in Lynn, robust effort in developing a mental health framework, partnering deeply with community partners, Lynn Community Health, Lynn Housing, to really make sure that we're addressing the hierarchy of need. And you'll see that in policy and budget recommendations that we've made thus far. In the mental health space in particular, there's a $25 million proposal in FY25 budget designed to first build upon existing mental health challenges, but then also work on developing a statewide strategy, because that doesn't exist right now. But I think that that's a key piece that people tend to gloss over and go right to, whether it's intervention strategies, curriculum instruction, which are all critically important, yes, but you have to deal with the hierarchy of need first. Beyond that, I would say let's let the research be the leader here in making decisions around the path forward in the classroom. And there's a lot of it, and it's critical to sort of center best practice based on evidence in the classroom as well. So I think those two pieces together are the key pieces toward moving forward and closing the gaps.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Dr. Tutwiler. And I think we saw in Lynn, you partner with many community groups when you were superintendent there and in North Andover. We just can't do it alone. I mean, we have students 180 days, 6.5 hours a day. I'm thrilled that we have universal free lunch now, and we can feed them, breakfast, lunch, snack, all those things. But it takes a real community effort and key partners to make a difference.
Agreed.
Yeah, so that segues nicely into our next question. It's almost like we scripted these.
It's almost like we've done this before, Dr. Mealey.
But one of the most memorable things for educators are those success stories, right? When all of that pays off. Do you have a particular success story that is really memorable to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and as you all know, as fellow educators, we don't always see the fruits of our labor. We don't always see the outcomes, the enduring outcomes in our work directly with students, because it doesn't show up until later. But I will tell you a very, very quick story. When I was the principal in Wayland, a former college classmate of mine was teaching at Brandeis, and he asked me to come over and join his class for a discussion, which I did after school one afternoon. And then on my way back in Waltham, I stopped at a gas station, and I was getting some gas. And there was an African-American man who was filling up his car the next pump station, and he was staring at me. And I looked at him like, man, I don't know that I recognize this guy. But he seems to have taken a liking to me, in some kind of way. But he had a very serious look on his face. And I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to mind my business, pump my gas, and keep it pushing. And then he came over, and he said, Mr. Tutwiler? And I'm like, oh, do we know each other? Turns out it was a student that I mentored when I was a student teacher at Boston English. At this point, this was more like a decade ago. And he wanted to tell me how well he was doing in life, and that he had a child, that he was married, that he was financially stable, gainfully employed. And this was a student who, when I was engaged in that mentoring relationship, was not headed in that direction. And really what he wanted to underscore or share with me in that moment, because we sort of happened upon each other, is the importance of that mentorship and the importance of that relationship and how that set him on a path to, sort of achieving his goals and realizing his dreams. And for me, it sort of highlights the centrality of relationships in the work that we do. And I carried that forward as a principal, as a superintendent. This is such a relational endeavor that we're engaged in, and that story really, really highlights that.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
That's a great story, and it's a nice, Jim, right into the segue into this next one. One of my favorite things to do when I visit schools is I love hearing from students.
Yeah.
And, I always ask them, what's your favorite part about school?
Yeah.
And then I always say to them, if you were the principal of this school and you could change any one thing, what would it be?
Yeah.
And I get a few of the answers that I anticipate and suspect that are coming, like longer recess, no homework, a lot of those. But we're always trying to improve. And so I have a question kind of along the same lines. From all your experience, is there anything you would love to see schools in Massachusetts do that they're not doing now? Something different.
Well, there's not a thing that I could say universally that schools that I would like to see happen at schools in Massachusetts aren't doing now. I spend a lot of time on the road, and I mean every corner of the Commonwealth. We're visiting schools, we're engaging with educators, with families, with students. There is one thing that's tied into, and so anyway, my point in saying that we do all the traveling is to underscore that I'm really proud of the things that are happening across the Commonwealth. If there was one thing that I would lift up that I think we should continue to evolve with, it's what happens in the high school experience. One of our priorities is reimagining high school, and this really stems from, what students are telling us about their high school experience, which is they don't find it as engaging as it could be. And as they move from class to class and from year to year, they're not seeing the tight connection between that high school experience and things that they want to do beyond. And so if there's one thing that I'd like to see different, it's for high schools to sort of be willing to sort of confront things that they've been doing for a long time and think about doing them differently. Prioritizing engagement, career connectedness, the things that students are really asking for. I've got an 18-year-old at home, and I hope we have time for this.
We have plenty of time.
So he is on the State Student Advisory, the SSAC, State Student Advisory Council. And he's sort of a quiet guy, and I talk about work a lot at home, but it doesn't really sort of, give me a lot back. But one day he asked me, he's like, hey, Dad, we've come up with a list of priorities that we want to share with the commissioner, and here they are. And one of them was we want more career-connected activities in high school. And I said, William, I've been talking about this for almost a year, man. Like, you didn't know this? He said, no, Dad, I didn't know that, but this is what we're interested in. So, this is the thing that I know that high school students are thirsting for. It's happening in robust ways through the innovation career pathways, early college. Some schools are engaging in after-dark programs and things of that nature.
We're in After Dark.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, nice. I love it.
So
I love it.
It's funny you say After Dark, and keep your train of thought here, because I don't want to sidetrack you, but we this was our first year doing it.
Awesome.
And I didn't think we'd have a lot of students.
Yeah.
We had we have 9 students over at Greater Lawrence Tech.
That's awesome.
Right now.
That's awesome.
And they do a half a day here in North Andover. Then they go over there for the afternoon. So I had a chance to go over and visit the exploratory.
Yeah.
They had a couple, like 1 week all the courses. And I actually got to hold some type of welding machine. They didn't have a helmet, Dr. Mealey, big enough to fit my head.
Yeah.
So I had like a face mask that I held up, by hand in front of my big head. So, but it's awesome. What a great experience for our kids.
Yeah.
So
it is. That's an engagement opportunity for those students. Now they're engaging in something that they feel passionate about and want to learn more about or see as part and parcel of their career going forward. And so I've said it all. I mean, that's the big thing. Reimagining high school is one thing that I would say we need to lean into.
We're constantly reminded when we communicate 12 times and somebody says, I didn't know this, that people don't get the message until they're ready to get the message.
Yeah.
And as far as teaching, the best time to teach is when somebody wants to learn it.
Yep. That's right.
Yep.
That's right. That's
so
right.
recently we've seen you on TV talking about the importance of attendance.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? What's driving that?
Yeah, I mean there's a sort of a simple rationale here, which is we are still emerging from the pandemic. We are still feeling the effects of it, and if we want to see students performing at or beyond levels that they did in 2019, we need them to be in school. That's really what it's about. And right now, if you look at last year, the chronic absenteeism rate was around 22%. That means 22% of students in the Commonwealth missed more than 18 days of school. That's a lot of school. And it's trending in the right direction. The year before that, it was 27%. The year before that, I think it was up into the 30s. So we're moving in the right direction, but we really wanted to be intentional about communicating the importance of foregoing, the vacation that dips in and has a student missing, 6 or 7 days of school, really prioritizing getting to school every day. So we want students to continue to grow and develop and to achieve at levels, again, at or higher than they did prior to the pandemic. So that's really what it's about. But it's also sort of naming, that sometimes absenteeism can be a manifestation of a deeper problem, and we're lifting up that important perspective as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean it's been a real challenge, I know, across the Commonwealth. And here in North Andover, we put together a protocol a few years ago involving our attendance officer, our counselors, our 2 bilingual parent liaisons, because we have to really find out what is going on and attack it from a few different places, including our nurses are involved as well.
Here.
And
That's
so
awesome.
I will say, and this just came up at, of all places, Finance Committee the other night, where we were extolling the virtues, and we weren't sure how it was going to work out, but we brought on 2 parent liaisons to help our parents who are maybe not familiar, maybe it's a language barrier or not familiar with the system, help them navigate the system, and it has made a huge difference.
There you go. That is fantastic. Congrats on
Dr. Mealey loves talking about that.
I do.
Yeah, we had some fun at Finance Committee the other night. Yeah. All right, the next question is really 2-part. And the first one is, what is the best part and the worst part of being the Secretary of Education?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the last question first. I've not experienced a worst part yet. This has been an incredible ride. I've been at it for a year and a few months. I roll out of bed at an ungodly hour, eager to do the work, eager to engage. I'm both learning a lot and having fun with it. So I haven't experienced the worst part yet. Well, actually, you know what? Let me give you an answer. The worst part is nobody knows what the heck I
do. They will now.
They will now, right? Let's get this NightSide out there. I think the best part of it is having the opportunity to interact with such a broad group of constituents, right? Like, I'm just yesterday I was at a family child care provider in West Roxbury. I left there and went to Western New England University.
Oh, in Springfield.
In Springfield, right next to your alma mater.
Yep.
That's right. For an event where we were able to meet with the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities and hear from what the Western Mass presidents, what's top of mind. And so all of these interactions I find really beneficial. I'm learning a ton from them, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to hear what's top of mind of people and then to be able to actually do something about it, right? To be able to go back to our offices and in partnership with the governor to develop policies and resource allocations that make a difference. So that I am absolutely loving.
No, that's great. Being in education, whether you're a teacher, an administrator, or a leader like yourself, it's challenging work. It can be stressful work. I thought for the worst part you were going to say that your commute might be. So you surviving the commute.
All good.
But tell us, what do you do for fun? What do you do for yourself? How do you, stay sane?
Stay sane. Well,
what do you like to do?
Well, a couple of things. One, I've got 3 kids. One has flown the coop. She's a junior in college in Chicago. So, she's gone. But I've got two who are still with us. One is a senior at Andover High School. The other is an 8th grader at Doherty Middle School in Andover. And so family time's super important to me. And both of my sons are pretty active in athletics. They both play the cello. So I lean into all of that. I lean into the concerts. I lean into the games. That's my happy place. I will also say, my neighbors will tell you, I've got a smoker at home. I love barbecue. I actually consider myself expert at it. My wife sent me to a class in Georgia to sort of do a deep dive on a barbecue. So when you see the smoke billowing up from in my neighborhood, yeah, people know to just sort of mosey on by and see what's going on.
Jim, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, Pat's right next door in Andover. Jim lives in Georgetown. I'm just up the street here behind the China Blossom.
Yeah.
And, I love barbecue.
Yeah, I do too. And I think I love eating it, but I also love the process of, preparing the meat or vegetable. And, we're usually talking about hours and hours of work to create the dish. And so it's a labor of love for me. And that's how I stay sane.
We have this podcast, but here at Camp Studios, they also have cooking shows. I think maybe we'll have to do a segment on barbecue and go off-site over to Pat's place.
You got it.
But, Pat, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I would not let the opportunity to hear from you what's top of mind in North Andover go by. So, maybe we just sort of frame it in what are the bright spots, what are the things you're super excited about that are going well for you, and then what's the pain point? What's the thing that you're working on that you want me to think about in my role?
Great question. And I'll take a first stab at it, Dr. Mealey, so you can get thinking here with some wait time. But, the bright spots right now is that we have a middle school addition of 26,000 square feet that's being built, and it's no increase to the taxpayers here in North Andover. The town's, put that as part of our facilities master plan too. We're also in the MSBA process to build a new Kittredge school. So those capital projects are really exciting. And, COVID, we have members of this community that lost their lives to COVID. Really tough. And at the same time, it helped accelerate our staffing plan. It helped bring more money from the feds and the town. We've had larger increases. So over the last 3 years, we've been able to add 31 positions and not fall off the funding cliff that everyone's seeing right now. And those positions, they're all student, 28 of them are student facing. So those are people in the trenches, 3 counselors one across each level, social workers, classroom teachers, special educators, special education team leaders. And then we have the 2 parent liaisons. One speaks Portuguese, one speaks Spanish. And then we have a director of math who's doing a lot of work with the calculus project right now in our school. So, those are some of the bright spots.
Calculus project.
The calculus project.
Dr. Mims?
Yes, I was just with Adrian the other day. He
good for you.
He was leaving North Andover High, and we talked out in the parking lot with his, one of his colleagues as well for about 40 minutes. Yeah. And then I said, you got to go you live in Randolph? You better get on the road. You'll never make it home.
Yep.
So really
Yeah.
some bright spots, and
That's great.
the challenges are, that we're lucky. Our retention rate here in North Andover is 91-92% for staff, but we have less people going into this business. I've seen less applications coming in, and there are far fewer programs in this nation to prepare educators, and we see less people going into this profession. So in North Andover, we're not seeing it just yet with, a lot of the classroom teachers, but you're seeing it in some really specialized special education positions that are really difficult to fill, and every community is trying to poach.
Yep.
So those are the challenges I see, and we're doing everything we can, partnering with different universities locally, thinking about pipelines coming up, and we're even thinking about our high school experience, doing different things. Is there anyone that's a student now that maybe want to teach? And so we have a peer leadership group that goes down to the elementary during their free block at the high school, and they work in math classes right now. So that's the kind of work we're doing. But it's going to be a challenge. I don't know, 5-10 years from now, where we'll be in terms of people going into this profession, because it's a difficult, challenging job. And it's not as easy as some people may think for teachers.
Yeah. I salute you, by the way. That's the work you're doing here is really impressive. Thank you for sharing.
So for me, the bright spots are definitely the opportunities we get to interact with our students and see what they're doing. They amaze me all the time. I've said this to Dr. Gilligan, I don't know how many times, but one of my pet peeves are when people say kids today and complain about them. It's like they said the same thing about you and your grandparents and everybody forever.
Yeah.
Kids are great.
Right.
And when we get the opportunity to see that, we go to our robotics kids come and present, and they're so excited. We go into Beauty and the Beast a couple of weeks ago. They were amazing. We see our chorus students, they just do tremendous things. Our athletes, all of our students, they find their interest and their passion, and it's so much fun to see them living that and giving them the opportunity. That's really the highlight for me, is giving them the opportunity to become who they want to become.
That's right.
And the challenge, not surprisingly for the finance and operations guy, it's, funding. And it's not necessarily the normal things, but right now we've got inflation impacting everybody, and then you've got negotiations that have been very contentious, and not surprisingly, they're responding to inflation, so they're demanding more, and now you're in competition with each other, and that's all in competition with what you need to provide for your staff and your students. That's one of the bigger challenges.
That's right. That's right, indeed. You guys are great, though. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Well, this has been quite a treat to have Pat here today with us. Do you have any parting words of advice for us?
No, this is great, and I really appreciate the conversation, the opportunity to cement in people's minds what it is the Secretary of Education does, and to sort of talk about some of the things that we're up to. But for me, selfishly, it's also really helpful to hear what's top of mind for you all here in North Andover. It sounds like you got some really incredible things going on with some challenges that I know are felt broadly, but we'll be partners with you through this.
Well, really appreciate having you here today. The work continues for us here in North Andover. We are live here in NAPS Studios. This is KnightSide with Dr. Gilligan and Dr. Mealey, and that's going to be a wrap for today. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.